Next from Springfield, members of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus expressed their concerns over Governor Rauner's proposed budget cuts that would eliminate $26 million from human services and public grants that they say are crucial for their communities. This runs about 30 minutes.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Lightfoot. My name is Michael Holmes. I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois African American Family Commission. If I may, I would like to also acknowledge that I have two commissioners joining us today, Commissioner Dew and Commissioner Avery. I want to thank the Black Caucus for taking time out and standing up for this issue. We clearly understand that our communities are being impacted. Although the budget pressures facing the state of Illinois are significant, the cuts to the state social service programming will be hardest felt from those who have the least. In response to the concerns echoed by many in the African American communities across the state, the Illinois African American Family Commission recommends a more compassionate approach to addressing budget concerns. This approach would work with communities to scale back social service programs, but only in response to a sustained investment in the economic vitality of the communities hardest hit. This is not an easy charge, but it provides a means to ensure critical programming is not wiped out, but rather scaled back in response to an economic investment and viable alternatives for community residents. For instance, the estimated 63,500 youth statewide that benefit from DHS community service programs are not without safe places during the summer, and to ensure an opportunity for summer employment and personal development is critical for our youth. Using the scale approach could also ensure that many employees of those organizations impacted by the cuts to social service agencies have employment options so they can continue to be active contributors to the community and not added to the unemployment statistics in Illinois. This scale approach can ensure the businesses and entrepreneurs in the hardest hit communities have an opportunity to be part of the economic growth and vitality in their communities and to participate in state procurement opportunities created by their tax dollars to provide jobs. Although the social service programming impacted by the budget crisis is essential to Illinois families, all of the social service programming impacted by the budget crisis is essential to Illinois families. However, so is ensuring those communities hit hardest by budget cuts emerge stronger and economically stable as a result of this process. Thank you.
So we have a couple areas that we want to identify, and I'd like to start out with Medicaid cuts. Our safety net hospitals can no longer take on a decrease in funds and Medicaid cuts. Many of the safety net hospitals, their customers are up to 78, 80% of them are Medicaid clients. And so if you cut Medicaid any further on top of the provider tax, then we're looking at all of our safety net hospitals at risk for closing. And I don't know if that's the intention of the governor, but that's clearly the results if he continued to hack away Medicaid dollars and also hack away at the provider's tax. And then one thing that's just so appalling to me is at DCFS, there's a group of foster children who are wards of the state, ages 18 to 21, that would just be immediately shut out. And that's such devastation because as an 18-year-old young lady, having lived with both of my parents, still didn't know which direction to go in, not exactly sure how to live and be. And as I'm transitioning to become a young woman, it's really important not to just be set free, especially if you're a ward of the state or if you have no parents. So to cut them off from college, to cut them off from housing, to cut the young ladies off from services in case they're with child, it's really, 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 really bad. There's some other words that I'd like to say instead of that, but I'll just stick with, I just cannot imagine that the governor knows how the impact will happen on so many individuals in need. We'd like to share with you some of the other categories on social services, education, the economy, and so we'll now hear from Representative Lilly, who will share with you the impact on social services.
Thank you, Chairman Lightford, Senator Lightford. I am here today for the governor's budget, proposed budget for FY 2016 proposes cuts up to $26 million in human services alone. These cuts to Illinois' most vulnerable populations, which you've already heard about, is a devastating blow to the people of our great state. These cuts impact people's lives, affecting their quality of life. These cuts represent over 70 programs in Department of Human Services and Health and Family Services that have been dismantled. Lives will be ruined, and families will be devastated. Cuts affecting children, seniors, adults with disabilities, individuals suffering from mental illness, $1.6 million in Medicaid impacting the health and wellness of all people. It's plain and simply wrong. It is clear that programs that assist, prevent, and aid, which is what our great state does with its human services budget, is essential for individuals in need. And if we eliminate or even reduce these services, it will cost the state more money. Cuts will not eliminate the need. It will lead to long-term, permanent devastation to individuals and their families, and it will cost the state 3 times more in other areas of the budget. This will only add more people to the alarming or already list of people in line for need for services and need of help. More families' quality of life will be impacted and even harmed. I would like to end with such programs, and here's a list of all those programs. Programs for children, all children, foster care, after-school program, homeless program are essential. Programs for adults who are mentally ill and homeless are essential. Programs that prevent addiction and early intervention are essential. It is important that we join you to make sure that the governor knows that human services are essential. Thank you.
We'd like to further the discussion with the effects on public safety. Senator Jacqueline Collins.
Thank you, Leader Lightford. And before I highlight the deleterious impact on public safety, let me just say I've been in the Illinois Senate for 12 years, and I know when people disagree strongly, they can work together effectively. But what is needed is a level of trust. And what this governor has shown us, that the bond of trust that once existed between this new governor and their advocates and the legislators that fight for them has unraveled. So let me deal with the impact on public safety. The state, I would just make this statement, the state needs to support programs that give at-risk youth job training and life skills. Numerous studies have shown that providing these services lowers violent crime and provides our kids with hope and a future and the ability to become productive citizens across the board. Rauner's budget eliminates crime intervention programs that have historically helped reduce crime rates in some of the most dangerous neighborhoods throughout Illinois. He cuts programs that save state dollars by keeping nonviolent offenders out of prisons. Such community-based services that decrease recidivism as employment services, drug abuse treatment, and educational opportunities. Also programs that provide access to computer and technology training. Lastly, protecting our safety net hospitals, as Leader Lyford has mentioned, from these budget cuts is critical in making sure that all people receive the medical treatment they need. We feel that the role of government is to create policies that are wise and just. Where is the wisdom and justice in these callous cuts? I tell that to a governor who said he wanted to be compassionate. Where is the compassion? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Collins. The effects on education, Representative Golar.
Thank you, Senator Lyford. It's a pleasure to be here and to address what is happening in the building. And I may preface it by saying someone left the building. Someone left the building. The state must play a crucial role in the development and sustainability of public schools, including improving extracurricular education and keeping young people off the streets. Cutting arts and foreign language won't help our children compete in a global economy. Through educational options and innovative reform, we can assure that geography and demography no longer dictate the level of education a person may receive. Higher education is the cornerstone of our technological and economic advancement. 31% cut represents a lack of forward thinking for our future leaders and innovators. Eliminating programs that push young people who are living in at-risk communities to become teachers and give back to the community where they came from reverse the strides that we've made to make the education feel more diverse so students and learn from teachers who understand issues they may be facing and can help them focus. I was very disturbed by the recent response to our governor in regards to suspending the monies for our agencies. And I thought I had my paper here. Here it is. So I thought I would put together a resolution, and here it is. The Constitution of the State of Illinois mandates the government to protect public health, welfare, and safety of the people of Illinois. And whereas that the guarantee of protection requires the expenditures of considerable state financial resources to comply with, and whereas the financial resources of the state of Illinois are in a substantial deficit, causing an enormous cut to education, and looking to it through the elected officials to comply with the state constitutional mandate. And whereas the elected leaders of the General Assembly and the governor met to reach agreement in order to provide enough funding to provide those persons in Illinois in need of governmental assistance to provide their health, welfare, and safety. And whereas the elected leaders and the governor reached a consensus on an agreement to fully fund government through the current fiscal year of 2015, and whereas the General Assembly passed and the governor signed appropriation legislation to implement the agreement, and whereas the governor has now immediately breached the appropriation legislation, endangering not only education, but the state in keeping its mandate to the people of the state of Illinois, and some of them the most fragile of our citizens. And whereas the governor has now immediately breached the appropriation legislation, endangering the state, and I'm saying that again, and whereas such breach violates both the spirit and the letter of the law and the Constitution, be it resolved by the Illinois House of Representatives, and of course, the Senate that such action by the governor is not only unconscionable, but it is a breach of public faith and trust and undermines the credibility and the integrity of the office of governor. And be it further resolved by the Illinois House of Representatives and the Senate that any further agreement with the governor which with the Illinois House is involved be memorialized in writing as a memorandum of understanding and made part of the official public record so that there be no doubt the intent of all parties at the agreement. And be it finally resolved that any breach of such agreement be documented by an additional memorandum of understanding to place on the public record any breach which occurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Golar. And we'd also like to talk about the effects on our economy, and that would be Senator Hutchinson.
Thank you, Leader Lightford, and all of you, my colleagues, for being here, for you being here listening. There is a definite impact on the economy whenever you constrict public sector spending. And so I wanted to talk about what the business case is for why this is harmful to our economy in a number of different ways. One is, let's start with a different take on the fact that the premise we're all dealing with is that we have to cut. Because that premise doesn't take into account how many cuts and how long these areas of the state government have been cut. So 9 out of every 10 of our dollars are spent in 4 areas. It's in education, human services, healthcare, and public safety. And for the last 15 years, since 2000, in nominal dollars and then adjusted for inflation, healthcare has been cut 21.9%. Higher ed's been cut 41%. Human services have suffered 34%. Public safety nearly 26%. So again, 9 out of every $10 that we spend go in those 4 areas, and we need to understand what we're talking about when you talk about the dollars that we spend, where those dollars come from, and then how we utilize them across the state. So what that means is that about 35% of our budget is education, about 30% of it is healthcare, about 21% of it is human services. But that also means that the largest chunk that we spend is on education and human services. And they have suffered the worst brunt of public cuts or reductions in public sector spending over the last 15 years when you really do adjust for inflation. So the premise that we must do this does not take into account how much we've already done, how much damage we've already inflicted. The other thing that I found that was interesting was that there's an economist named Mark Zandi. Mark Zandi works for Moody's.com. It's a bond rating agency. This man was the top Republican advisor to John McCain's 2008 election when he ran against Obama. So I'm not giving you any liberal talking points or any of this stuff. This is Econ 101. We're talking about math now. And when he looked at the effect of restricting public sector dollars and what the correlation is in the loss of private sector economic activity, you get a $1.30 multiplier. So for every dollar you cut, you lose $1.30 in private sector economic activity. What that means is that these last $26 million in cuts are really $33.8 million in lost economic productivity. And that $33.8 million is now concentrated in some of the most vulnerable populations and communities that we have. So in order to say we're going to cut to be more competitive, or we're going to save taxpayer dollars, essentially these cuts now cost us more than what it was that we cut. So not only are we not offering the services, but how you get that multiplier is that the people who are providing the services, these small businesses, these suppliers, these people who are providing things that the state contracted them to do, they now lose their jobs. And when people lose their jobs, they can't spend money in the local economy. And when you can't spend money in the local economy, what that affects are your grocery stores and your coffee shops and your cleaners, all those things that make up a vibrant community. The very first things to go is what happens when you constrict public sector spending. So the thought that you can cut your way to prosperity is a myth. And this was found by one of the top Republican economics advisors that works for Moody's.com, a bond rating agency. Now, if you put that in perspective for where Illinois is and who we are in this country and who we are across the world, Illinois spends anywhere from $32 billion to $37 billion out of our general revenue fund, our budget. But that's a part of what that pales into comparison about what our total economy is. Illinois has a $720 billion economy. That would be about the size of, that'd be about 21st, if we were a nation, 21st economies across the world. It's bigger than Egypt. 21st across the world. That's the economy that Illinois produces every single year, in excess of $720 billion. So when you look at a 37, well, I'll just give you, split the difference. If you look at a $35 billion budget, that's like spending about a nickel on the dollar. And where our discretionary money is in 4 places: education, human services, healthcare, and public safety. So the myth that we're being asked to believe right now is that in the 5th largest state in the country, in the richest country in the world, with an economy that would be 21st amongst all global nations, that we can't afford to provide child care. We can't afford to educate our children. We can't afford to invest in public safety, that we just simply can't afford to do that for the people that we say that we represent. That cannot be. That cannot be. So the business case for this is, if you believe that you want Illinois to be more competitive, you cannot reduce adequate investment on the front end and expect to be competitive on the back end, any more than you can cut Head Start and early childhood education and not expect that you're going to have to build juvenile detention centers later. This is just math. This is economics 101. We can do better than this. We have to do better than this. And if the state is supposed to run like a business, this is not the way to do it. Thank you.
Now is the time that we are willing to accept any questions, but I'd like to also welcome our Deputy Majority Leader, Senator Claiborne, our Assistant Majority Leader, Senator Donnie Trotter, our Chairman of our Senate Black Caucus, Emil Jones III, Representative Will Davis, who is our Appropriations Chair of Higher Education, Senator Maddie Hunter, who is all over public health and has been her entire time here and can answer any questions you may want to know about public health, our leader in the House, Representative Jahan Gordon. And everyone else has either been to the podium already. And so at this time, we'd be happy to answer questions, recognizing that we know that that this has to only be a beginning discussion with the governor. We are adamant about not allowing this type of action to take place against our communities, and we'd love an opportunity to sit down with him to share with him once again what's essential to the African American community. I have put in a call for a meeting. He will not be in Springfield till 5 p.m. this evening, but we are looking forward to having that discussion with him and hopefully assisting him in the right direction on what's fair, what's equitable, what's just. We're open for questions.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Judith Geffner with Illinois Partners for Human Service, and my question is to Senator Hunter.
Okay.
I'd like to know, Senator, your thoughts about the hearing that just took place and the response that you were able to garner from our GOMB office and DHS relative to the Friday mass school cuts.
Well, thank you, Judith. You just heard about the lack of trust upstairs. That's all we talked about is trust, 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 okay? So what is going on is that Illinois and state government has always had a safety net. The safety net is eroding every single day under this administration. You know, when you had an individual or a family who experienced some sort of crisis in their lives, they've always turned to the state. They've turned to their community-based organization for help. But what this governor is doing, because he says that there's not enough money, he's eroding that safety net. So therefore, where does people go? We're talking about the most vulnerable population here in the state of Illinois. You had agencies, these people that are standing outside now, they did not receive an answer today. Should they close down finally, completely, or not? What is the next steps? They do not know, we do not know. So the answer lies within the hands of the governor. We saw very clearly that the acting Secretary of Human Services, he has absolutely no idea as to what's going on. He couldn't answer any questions. And obviously, he was not at the table when cuts were being made in his department. He kept referring to the Bureau of the Budget. So who's really in charge? Who made the decisions and why? You know, we could have given them the $26 million. We could have found this somewhere a couple of weeks ago, but they did not make us aware that this was a problem. We found the dollars. We found over $1 billion that the governor wanted for Department of Corrections, for child care, for court reporting. We found those dollars. So we could have found $26 million. That's not a whole lot of money. So the question is, had they put autism in that 1.5 or $4 billion we gave the governor to cut, the question is, would we have gotten enough votes on the floor to give the governor those dollars? And the answer is no. Same thing for prevention of substance abuse and all the other cuts that were made over the $26 million. The answer is no. So now we know that all kinds of games are being played here. And no, we cannot trust this guy at all. Thank you.
Questions?
Yes, I'm Brittany Brooks from LFO Radio. Are there any aspects on the turnaround agenda that you guys do support?
Senator Trotter, would you like to answer that? Can you repeat that, though?
Are there any aspects on the turnaround agenda that you guys do support?
We certainly can support the concept that something has to be done here in the state of Illinois. We understand that one of the many ways that things can be changed is, in fact, that you do restructure how you do business. So can we support some of the issues in this turnaround agenda? Correct. We certainly have to look at building our economic base, as pointed out by Senator Hutchinson. We certainly have to invest more dollars into K-12, which we've seen. We certainly have to invest in the babies, as we've seen in the turnaround agenda, child care. Those things need to be done as we go forward. What we do not appreciate is an individual who wants to govern by fiat and says that, and with that happening, we become now entwined with his definition of essential. There's a purpose and a reason why we have a constitution that gives us 3 tiers of government, and that's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. There is a reason for that, because then you have a multiplicity of ideas and concepts which come together to help the entire state, not one individual who has his own esoteric view of how life should be in Illinois.
It was said earlier that that it just can't be that there's not enough money to be able to do this. Is that kind of saying that the money that we think we have isn't there's actually more of it, or are we proposing other revenue streams?
Senator Trotter.
And you answered your own question. Certainly, we need to look at other revenue streams. Not once in these discussions since the election in November has this governor talked about revenue streams. He talks about wanting to build Illinois, but he doesn't give us a plan of, one, when we start building Illinois, what kind of good things will come out of it. One, revenue. How do we enrich the entire state, not make rich certain individuals? So that is something that has been missing in the discussions.
Along with what Leader Trotter just said, there are specific things that there are members of the General Assembly that have proposed. One example, we have a bill to close corporate tax loopholes. That was talked about during the election, and the irony in that is that bill was worth $330 million. When we were dealing with the child care crisis, that was worth $300 million. So the question really isn't whether or not we can. It's not whether or not we're able to. It's whether or not we have the political will to make different choices in how it is we spend what limited dollars we have. So instead of acting as though we're on a frame of we must cut, the real question is, where must we invest with the limited dollars we have? And that's a matter of political will.
You're watching the Illinois Channel. an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.